For more on this, I'm now joined in the studio by Yvan, SAVY, head of a foundation called Plan International France. Hello, thank you very much for coming in. Now, the report we just broadcast looks at the situation globally. I'd like to start off, though, with a question about the situation here in France. How would you describe the situation for children here in terms of healthcare and access to education generally?
Well, of course, children in France live a much better life than in many places around the world, as we saw in your documentary. But what we have to say is that we can be worried on certain children living in poverty. I mean, poverty is also impacting a lot of children in France and their ability to learn properly and to get access to a right environment to be educated. There are a lot of isolated minor children which are migrants, and their rights are not fulfilled, and I believe France needs to progress in this area. So there are some concerns, of course. Also, I would say that with the rise of the internet, violence in schools and cyber violence is affecting more and more children, and we need to be very attentive to the situation and to the protection of children in France on the cyberspace.
So zooming out again, before the report, I was mentioning that UNICEF says that action is needed, urgent action for the poorest children, if they have to feel the effects of this convention. What kind of urgent action would you say is needed?
Well, I think it was mentioned in your documentary. I mean, there are crises and I mean, it can be brought by conflicts or by natural disaster. Climate crisis as well is having a huge impact on children. Half of the 70 million people who are refugees in the world are children. And in those situations, the risk of dropping out from schools is doubled. So their right to education is not fulfilled. They suffer from some violence and abuse. They can be taken into the conflicts as soldiers or as sexual prostitutes for girls. So, I mean, this is one concern. And the climate crisis is going to eat children first, for sure, and is going to also impair the rights of future generations. So this is really a growing concern for all of the child rights community.
So you're saying that leaders worldwide need to take climate change more seriously because that has an effect on migration, which in turn affects access to education, you were saying, for certain children.
Yeah, and protection as well. And it's also the life of the future citizens. I mean, children are the future of the world, and we need to absolutely address this crisis because it already impacts the most vulnerable ones in countries which suffer from climate change now, and it will impact for sure our own children in a developed world. So we absolutely need to address that.
Now, there's something you mentioned before I'd like to develop on. You mentioned sexual violence. Would you say that the situation for little girls around the world is more difficult than for boys generally? Yeah,
they suffer from specific sexual violence, but all children can be abused. I mean, because they are under, the power of adults versus children is really what makes the sexual abuse happen. But girls suffer very specific issues. For example, child marriage, 12 million child marriages per year. It almost only affects girls. There is a female genital mutilation. 44 million girls under 14 have been mutilated, and they suffer for the rest of their life. And it happens when they are girls. They have no right to express their opinion, and they would for sure refuse to receive this kind of treatment. So yes, there are things to be done specifically on girls, and universally we need to make sure that we get true equality between girls and boys.
All right, I'm afraid we've run out of time. Thank you very much for coming in. Thank you, Yvan, SAVY from Plan International France. Thank you.
Thank you.